Welcome, friends, and let me regale you with a tale of love, deception, and the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit, set against the backdrop of the bustling streets of New York City. Enjoy the story. The bustling streets of New York City were alive with the sounds of honking cars and chattering pedestrians. In the middle of it all was the vibrant outdoor market, a kaleidoscope of colors and aromas that assaulted the senses. Sarah Reynolds weaved through the crowd, her arms laden with bags overflowing with fresh fruits she had just purchased. Peaches, apples, oranges. She had gone a little overboard at the produce stands, but she couldn't resist the alluring displays. As she looked around for a place to set her haul down and call for a taxi, a young man came barreling out of a nearby store, nearly knocking her over. Fruits went flying, and bags split open, their contents spilling onto the dirty sidewalk. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," the man exclaimed, his face flushed with embarrassment. "Let me help you with that." He quickly crouched down and began gathering the scattered produce, depositing it back into the torn bags. Sarah couldn't help but notice his chiseled features and warm, friendly eyes as he looked up at her with an apologetic smile. "I just had another argument with my old man and stormed out without paying attention," he explained sheepishly. "I'm Mike, by the way, Mike Decker. And I swear I'm not some creep or anything, despite nearly mowing you down." Sarah let out a melodious laugh that seemed to brighten the entire street. "Well, it's nice to meet you, Mike. I'm Sarah. And don't worry, I could tell you weren't a creep." As they finished collecting the last of the fruits, Mike insisted on helping Sarah get her bags to her car since it was parked nearby. She tried to protest, not wanting to be a bother, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. Little did Sarah know, this chance encounter would change both of their lives forever. Mike couldn't believe his luck as he loaded the heavy bags into the trunk of his beat-up Honda Civic. Sarah was easily the most beautiful woman he had ever laid eyes on, with her long chestnut tresses, piercing green eyes, and a smile that could melt even the coldest of hearts. As they settled into the car, Mike made sure to drive well under the speed limit, taking the long way to Sarah's address in the hopes of spending more time with her. He couldn't let this opportunity slip away. "So, Sarah," he began, flashing her a winning smile, "any chance a gorgeous girl like you would be free for a movie this Saturday night? Dinner, too, if you're interested." To his delight, Sarah returned the smile, causing his heart to flutter. "You know what, Mike? I think I'd like that." They chatted amicably about their interests and hobbies, and before long, Mike was pulling up to the stately manor that Sarah called home. His jaw nearly hit the floor when he saw the sprawling estate, complete with meticulously manicured grounds and a fountain in the courtyard. "You live here?" he asked incredulously. Sarah shrugged, seeming almost embarrassed by the opulence. "My parents just bought it a few months ago, but I'm not really one to flaunt money or anything." As Mike walked her to the imposing front door, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of concern. Her family was obviously loaded. What were the chances they would approve of their daughter dating a regular guy like him? Little did he know, the truth was far more complicated than he could ever imagine. "Dad, you'll never believe the girl I met today," Mike exclaimed as he burst through the door of the modest two-bedroom apartment he shared with his father, Tom. Tom Decker looked up from the recliner where he had been watching the evening news, an amused smile playing across his weathered features. "Oh yeah? Do tell." Mike launched into an animated retelling of his encounter with Sarah at the market, his eyes lighting up as he described her beauty, her kindness, and the undeniable connection he had felt with her. "And get this, she agreed to go out with me on Saturday," Mike gushed, running a hand through his shaggy brown hair. "Can you believe it? A total babe like that, interested in little old me." Tom chuckled at his son's excitement. "She must be one hell of a special girl to have you so worked up. Where does this vision of loveliness live?" Mike's smile faltered slightly as he recalled the opulent mansion. "That's the thing, Dad. When I dropped her off, it was at this crazy huge house, a full-on mansion. Her parents must be loaded." Concern creased Tom's brow. As a struggling single father who worked long hours at the auto repair shop, he knew all too well about class differences and the strain they could put on relationships. "Now don't you go getting ahead of yourself," he cautioned. "For all we know, she could just be renting a room there or something. Don't make assumptions about her family's money. I guess you're right, Mike conceded, though his defenses were already up. Parents with money often looked down on blue-collar guys like him. If Sarah's family was as wealthy as their house suggested, gaining their approval was going to be an uphill battle. Still, he had felt that spark, that inexplicable connection with Sarah. She was different, special, and he was determined to do whatever it took to make her his. The week leading up to his date with Sarah was interminable for Mike. He spent hours agonizing over what to wear, fretting about making a good impression. When Saturday finally arrived, he showed up at the theater 45 minutes early, wringing his hands nervously as he waited for Sarah to arrive. The moment she stepped out of her sleek black Mercedes, Mike's breath caught in his throat. She looked like a vision in a form-fitting red dress that hugged her curves to perfection. A shy smile played across her lips as she approached, and Mike felt his heart flip in his chest. "Hey there," she greeted him warmly. "Sorry if I kept you waiting. Shall we head in?" The movie was a blur for Mike, who found himself completely captivated by the ethereal beauty sitting next to him. He hung on her every word during their conversations, enthralled by her whip-smart intellect and quirky sense of humor. By the time their date rolled into a late dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant, Mike knew without a doubt that Sarah was the one, his soulmate, his destiny. She was everything he had ever dreamed of, and so much more. As they parted ways that night with a lingering kiss, Mike felt like he was walking on air. He couldn't wait to tell his dad about how incredibly perfect the evening had been. "I'm going to marry that girl someday," he declared dreamily when he got home, not caring how ridiculous he sounded. "She's the one, Dad. I can feel it." Tom looked at his love-struck son with a mixture of amusement and concern. He was happy Mike had found someone special, but proposing marriage after one date? The kid was moving way too fast. "Why don't you take it slow there, slugger?" Tom suggested gently. "You haven't even met her parents yet. Get to know her better first before you go planning your nuptials." But Mike was too blissfully infatuated to heed the voice of reason. His mind was made up. Sarah was his forever girl. Now he just had to find a way to win over her wealthy family. If only he knew what skeletons lurked in their gilded closets. The weeks flew by in a whirlwind of blissful dates, romantic nights, and talking about their future together. With each passing day, Mike fell deeper and deeper in love with the captivating Sarah. 2 months into their fairy tale romance, he could no longer deny the intense feelings swelling in his heart. It was time to make things official and ask for her hand in marriage. Mike had spent weeks agonizing over the perfect ring, finally settling on a stunning princess-cut diamond set in a platinum band. It was extravagant, especially for a mechanic's budget, but he wanted to show Sarah how devoted he was to making her happy. When the big night arrived, Mike took Sarah for a horse-drawn carriage ride through Central Park. As the city's twinkling lights surrounded them, and the clip-clop of the horse's hooves provided a romantic soundtrack, he pulled the ring box from his pocket with trembling hands. "Sarah," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "from the moment I literally ran into you at that market, I knew you were someone special. You're beautiful, brilliant, kind, everything I could ever want in a partner. These past 2 months have been the happiest of my life, and I can't imagine spending another day without you by my side forever." Tears shimmered in Sarah's eyes as Mike got down on one knee in the carriage. "Sarah Reynolds, will you make me the luckiest man in the world and become my wife?" A radiant smile spread across her face as she nodded vigorously. "Yes, Mike, 1,000 times, yes!" He slipped the dazzling ring onto her slender finger, then pulled her in for a searing kiss, pouring every ounce of love and devotion into the embrace. When they finally parted, Sarah's eyes shone with pure joy. "I love you so much," she whispered fervently. "This is all I've ever wanted." As they continued their carriage ride, Sarah's expression turned slightly pensive, her brow furrowing. "There's just one thing." Mike felt his heart lurch with dread. "What is it, babe?" She worried her plump lower lip. "Well, you still haven't met my parents. And the truth is, they're complicated. Extremely wealthy and a bit snobbish, if I'm being honest. Swallowing hard, Mike tried to keep his sudden nerves at bay. Hey, it'll be okay. They're going to love me once they get to know me. When can I meet them? They're out of town on another of their endless vacations at the moment, Sarah replied evasively. But I promise as soon as they're back, you'll get to meet them. I just hope they can see what an amazing man you are, like I do. Her warm smile and reassuring kiss did little to settle the pit of worry that had formed in Mike's gut. If Sarah's family was as rich and stuck up as she implied, winning their approval was going to be one hell of an uphill battle. But she was the love of his life. He would walk through fire if that's what it took to make her his wife. No matter what her parents threw at him, Mike was determined to prove his worth. In the weeks after the proposal, Mike grew increasingly bothered by the lingering questions surrounding Sarah's family. Why was she so hesitant to discuss them or arrange a meeting? He knew she had mentioned their wealth, but could they really be that insufferable? And then there was the nagging issue of her last name, Reynolds. It didn't match the prestigious Vanderbilt name inscribed on the gleaming gates of the mansion where he had dropped her off on their first date. He had brushed it off at first, assuming she had taken her mother's maiden name or something, but the more he thought about it, the more it ate away at him. What if Sarah's family wasn't who she said they were? What if she had been lying this whole time about her background? The thought made him physically ill, but Mike knew there was only one way to put his doubts to rest. He had to see the truth for himself. And so he began hatching a plan, as crazy as it seemed. If Sarah's family was out of town, that meant the mansion would be empty, yes? All he had to do was find a way inside to look around, to get a feel for who these people really were. With a few simple supplies from a costume shop, Mike had his answer. He would sneak into the house disguised as a delivery man, using the age-old ruse to gain access. Then he could poke around, get the lay of the land, and put this whole mess to rest once and for all. His dad warned him he was crazy, that he was crossing lines that could land him in serious legal trouble. But Mike was too consumed by his need for answers to listen to reason. He was going to find out the truth about Sarah's family, one way or another. Mike's palms were slick with nervous sweat as he approached the imposing front gates of the Vanderbilt mansion. Clutching a cheap plastic delivery bin as his flimsy prop, he took a steadying breath and pressed the call button on the intercom. "Delivery for the Vanderbilt residence," he announced in his best official-sounding tone when the static-laced voice crackled through the speaker. There was a pause, then the wrought-iron gates began to swing open with an ominous creak. Showtime. With his baseball cap tugged low and his head down, Mike hurried up the immaculate cobblestone driveway towards the house's arched front entrance. His heart thundered in his ears, a mix of adrenaline and trepidation coursing through his veins. What if he got caught? This was almost certainly illegal, not to mention a surefire way to torpedo any chance of earning Sarah's family's approval. But he had to know the truth, had to see with his own eyes what was really going on. The front door was unlocked, allowing Mike to slip inside with ease. He found himself in an opulent marble foyer, rich mahogany accents and priceless artworks adorning the walls. This place just screamed old money, and lots of it. Clutching his prop delivery bin tightly, Mike began creeping through the cavernous home, his eyes wide as he tried to drink in every luxurious detail. This was exactly the kind of place he had imagined Sarah's wealthy family living in. But as he turned a corner into what appeared to be a sitting room, Mike froze in his tracks. There, just a few feet away, with a feather duster in her hand, was the unmistakable figure of Sarah herself. Dressed in a plain black skirt and white blouse, with her hair tied back in a no-nonsense bun. She looked up at the sound of his footsteps, and her eyes went wide with shock and panic. "Mike!" she sputtered, clearly horrified to see him there. "What are you doing here?" Before he could respond, the sound of a nearby door opening caused them both to start. Mike's blood turned to ice in his veins as two well-dressed, middle-aged people strode into the room, a man and a woman he could only assume were the owners of the house. Sarah's family, her real family. The man's brow furrowed as he took in the strange scene before him. "You girl!" he barked at Sarah, his voice thick with disdain. Who is this person, and what is he doing in my home? Sarah opened and closed her mouth, looking like a deer caught in headlights as realization dawned on Mike. The horrible, inescapable truth crashed over him like a tsunami. Sarah wasn't the wealthy heiress she had claimed. She was the help, a maid working in this house that so clearly didn't belong to her family. She had lied to him about everything, from her very first words. Searing betrayal cut through Mike like a white-hot knife. His legs nearly gave out from the shock of it all as he met Sarah's devastated gaze. She had played him for a fool, and he had fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker. His world was crashing down around him, and he had no one to blame but himself. Mike felt like he might be physically ill as the weight of Sarah's deception threatened to crush him. He had been so incredibly stupid, taking her lies at face value and getting in this deep without a second thought. His mind was whirling, a maelstrom of anger, confusion, and bone-deep hurt. How could she have done this to him? After everything, after he had loved her with every fiber of his being and planned a life with her. The next few minutes were a blur as Mike somehow found the strength to flee the mansion, ignoring Sarah's desperate pleas for him to stop and talk to her. He couldn't bear to look at her, to be anywhere near the source of this gut-wrenching betrayal. By the time he reached his dad's apartment, Mike was an emotional wreck, his face streaked with angry tears. He tried to explain what had happened, but the words kept catching in his throat, turning into unintelligible sobs. Tom instantly went into protective father mode, pulling his son into a comforting embrace as Mike's anguished sobs racked his body. "Take it easy, son," Tom soothed, his brow creased with fatherly concern. "Just take a few deep breaths and tell me what's going on." It took several long minutes for Mike to regain enough composure to choke out the truth. The whole sordid truth about Sarah's betrayal, about how she had lied and deceived him from the very beginning. As the words tumbled out in a torrent of heartbreak and fury, Tom's expression morphed from shock to outrage. "That lying little," he growled, his hands balling into fists. "I'll wring her scrawny neck, pulling a stunt like that. You hear me, Mike? She's not worth another second of your thoughts or tears." But Mike knew his father's bluster was just a front to mask his own anger and pain on his son's behalf. Because despite Tom's bravado, they had both been taken for fools by Sarah's web of lies and deception. A heavy silence hung between them, punctuated only by Mike's ragged breathing as he tried to collect himself. Just when Tom opened his mouth to offer some gruff words of comfort, a soft knock sounded at the door. Both men froze, their heads whipping towards the sound. Mike felt his stomach drop, a cold sweat prickling his skin. It couldn't be. Could it? "Michael?" a tremulous voice called out from the other side of the door. "Mike, please. It's me, Sarah. I need to explain everything to you, to both of you." Rage boiled in Mike's veins at the sound of that voice, that deceitful siren's call that had so thoroughly shattered his heart. He moved to yell at her to get lost, to never show her lying face around him again. But Tom put a hand on his son's heaving chest, his eyes filled with a stern resolve. "Let her in, Mike. If this little nutjob thinks she can justify what she did, I want to hear it." With a resigned nod, Mike yanked open the door, revealing Sarah standing there with red-rimmed eyes and a complexion as pale as a ghost. She looked utterly distraught, wringing her hands anxiously as she met his smoldering glare. "You've got 5 minutes," Mike spat, his tone laced with venom. "Then I never want to see or hear from you again, you understand?" Sarah flinched as if he had struck her, but she gave a shaky nod of acknowledgement. "I understand. And I'm so sorry, Mike. You have to believe I never meant to hurt you like this." As she launched into her explanation, neither man could have predicted the jaw-dropping bombshell that was about to drop. Sarah took a deep, steadying breath, steeling herself to finally unveil the truth she had kept so carefully guarded for her entire life. I'm not who you think I am," she began haltingly, her eyes darting between Mike's thunderous expression and Tom's penetrating stare. "The Vanderbilts, the family who owns that mansion, they're not my family, at least not in the way I led you to believe." She drew in another fortifying breath before continuing in a small, pained voice. "When I was born, Robert, he told my mother I had died during childbirth. He lied to her, and then abandoned me, leaving me in a dumpster like garbage because he didn't want me around as an heir to jeopardize his inheriting my mom's family fortune. The words hung heavy in the air, a sickening admission that left both Mike and Tom gaping in abject horror. Sarah's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she pushed on with her gut-wrenching tale. Another family found me and took me in, raised me as their own without knowing the truth of my origins, she explained, her voice thick with emotion. It wasn't until a few months ago that I uncovered the real story through some old documents and started piecing everything together. Mike felt his anger rapidly dissolving, replaced by a gnawing ache of pity and sorrow for the woman before him. She had been an innocent victim all along, her life upended by one man's despicable greed and cruelty. "So you took that job at the mansion," he murmured, the full picture becoming clear. "You were trying to get close to your birth mother, to expose that bastard for what he did." Sarah nodded jerkily, swiping at the tears that had started streaking down her cheeks. "I just wanted her to know the truth, to have the chance at a relationship with her real daughter that was stolen from us. I never imagined—" Her gaze found Mike's, swimming with remorse. "I never imagined I would fall in love in the process, hurt someone I cared about so deeply." The anguish in her eyes was palpable, her regret hanging like a dense shroud around them all. Mike surprised himself by feeling his own defenses crumbling in the wake of her heart-wrenching confession. This poor woman had been to hell and back, all because of one man's depravity and lies. And rather than lash out, rather than seek vengeance, she had only wanted to connect with the mother who never knew she was alive. Slowly, Mike crossed the small room until he was standing before Sarah. He cupped her tear-stained cheek, his thumb brushing across the soft skin as their eyes locked. "I'm so sorry, babe," he murmured, his own voice catching with emotion. "Sorry you had to go through all that. Sorry I didn't give you a chance to explain before flying off the handle like a jackass." Sarah's lip trembled, fresh tears spilling forth. Can you ever forgive me for lying to you at first, even if my intentions changed?" In response, Mike simply pulled her into a fierce embrace, cradling her shuddering body against his own as she wept. Over her shoulder, he met his father's gaze, seeing a mixture of sadness and newfound respect reflected back at him. They had both misjudged this woman, this survivor who had overcome such unimaginable cruelty with grace and poise. But Mike knew in that moment that he didn't just love Sarah. He admired her, respected her strength more than anyone he had ever known. And as he held her close, stroking her hair soothingly, he made a silent vow. He would stand by her side through this, would be her rock as she finally confronted the demons of her past once and for all. Because this remarkable woman deserved to have someone fight for her after too many years of being tossed aside and betrayed. In the aftermath of Sarah's gut-wrenching revelation, the weeks that followed were a whirlwind of confrontation, chaos, and the long-overdue unraveling of the Vanderbilt family's sordid secrets. Despite Mike's initial misgivings, Sarah had resolved to take the high road, refusing to pursue legal action or public shaming against her monstrous biological father. Her only wish was for her birth mother, Emily, to finally know the truth about what had happened to her baby all those years ago. With Mike's support and Tom steadfastly by their side, Sarah had arranged a sit-down with Emily, dreading yet yearning for the chance to connect with the woman who had been cruelly robbed of her child's existence. The meeting had been every bit as emotionally charged as they expected, with Emily dissolving into heartbroken sobs upon learning of her husband's unforgivable deception and betrayal. She had clung to Sarah like a lifeline, her anguished cries echoing through the opulent mansion as decades of lies and tragedy finally came to light. In the end, it was Emily's decision to have Robert arrested on charges of child abandonment and endangerment, her rage as a mother overshadowing any residual feelings for the man who had so callously discarded their daughter. The high-profile scandal made international headlines, with the public equally appalled and captivated by the disturbing revelations about the wealthy Vanderbilt patriarch. As for Sarah, she adamantly refused to seek monetary restitution or attempt to claim her stake in the vast family fortune. Her only request of her birth mother was for the chance to finally know her, to build the mother-daughter relationship they had been so cruelly robbed of. Emily, still reeling from the truth, but embracing her second chance with a ferocious determination, agreed without hesitation. She sold the opulent mansion, ridding herself of the tainted reminder of her former life with Robert, and used the proceeds to start anew with Sarah in a more modest home nearby. And through it all, Mike stood by Sarah's side in resolute devotion. His anger towards her over the initial deception had been eclipsed by a profound admiration for her poise and resilience in the face of such a horrific betrayal. She was the strongest, bravest woman he knew, and he loved her more with each passing day. Which was why, when the dust finally settled nearly 6 months later, he decided to finally make things official once more. This time, however, there would be no deceptions or surprises as he planned his proposal. It was a beautiful spring evening when Mike gathered Sarah's newly reconnected family, along with his dad Tom, for a small outdoor dinner on the patio of Emily's new home. As the candles flickered and the string lights twinkled overhead, he took Sarah's hands in his, peridot eyes locking with her emerald gaze. "A wise man once told me not to be so eager to rush into marriage without getting to know someone first," Mike began, flashing his father a grateful smile. "Well, I've gotten to know you, Sarah Reynolds, the good, the bad, the painful truths, and the inner beauty that shines through it all, and I've never loved or admired anyone more." Tears shimmered in Sarah's eyes as Mike slowly lowered himself to one knee, producing the same sparkling diamond ring from all those months ago. "Sarah, would you make me the luckiest man on earth and become my wife? For real this time? No secrets between us?" A radiant smile bloomed across her face as she let out a watery chuckle. "Yes, Mike. 1,000,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and surged up to claim her lips in a searing kiss, as their families looked on with misty smiles and joyful applause. When they finally parted, Sarah's expression was one of pure, unbridled bliss. "I love you so much," she breathed ardently. "Thank you for never giving up on me, on us." Mike cradled her face in his work-roughened hands, staring at her with every ounce of adoration and devotion he possessed. "You're my forever girl, Sarah Reynolds. No matter what curveballs life threw at us, I knew we were meant to be together." And in a shocking twist neither could have seen coming, it was Tom who chose that moment to clear his throat and interject with 4 words that stole the show. "Emily, will you marry me?" The pair's jaws dropped in unison as a beaming Tom dropped to one knee in front of Emily, producing a stunning diamond ring of his own. The older woman's hands flew to her mouth, eyes shining with joy and tears as she gave a vigorous nod. "Yes, oh Tom, yes, of course." As the newly engaged couples embraced amid laughter and happy tears, it was a picture-perfect ending to the long, sordid road that had led them here. A road filled with darkness and deception, but also resilience, forgiveness, and the ultimate triumph of love. Because no matter how twisted the path, fate had a way of righting itself in the most unexpected of ways. And as the two couples reveled in their hard-won happily ever afters, they knew their journey was just beginning.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? "I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hope to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.